In 2014, the world's largest Bitcoin exchange simply announced it was gone, and nobody could explain how. The story everyone tells is simple. Mt. Gox was hacked. Sophisticated attackers infiltrated the servers, stole 850,000 bitcoins worth roughly $500 million at the time, and disappeared. Case closed. The exchange was negligent. The technology was fragile. Bitcoin itself was too dangerous for ordinary people. This narrative became orthodoxy. It still is, for most people who lived through the panic of 2014. But the accepted story collapses under specifics. And those specifics matter, because they explain why Mt. Gox's collapse became crypto's origin wound, and why the real culprit was far more mundane than any sophisticated hack. Start in 2006, Tokyo. A programmer named McCaleb created Magic, the Gathering Online, a digital trading card game. He built an exchange, a marketplace where players could buy and sell cards for real money. He called it Mt. Gox, Magic, the Gathering Online e-exchange. The site worked. It made money. Then McCaleb got bored. In 2010, McCaleb sold Mt. Gox to Karpelès, a French developer living in Japan. Karpelès was 25. He had no experience running an exchange. He had no background in security. He was, by his own admission, teaching himself Bitcoin as he went. He took control of a website that would soon become the world's largest Bitcoin marketplace. This is where the story should have ended. Between 2011 and 2013, Mt. Gox processed roughly 70% of all Bitcoin transactions on Earth. The site was a mess. The codebase was ancient, inherited from its trading card days. Security patches were sporadic. The infrastructure was built on the assumption that Bitcoin would remain a niche curiosity, not a global asset. Karpelès was overwhelmed. He was one man managing a platform worth billions. Then, in June 2011, someone accessed a Mt. Gox administrator account and withdrew 2,000 bitcoins. Not a hack. An account compromise. The attackers had a password. They logged in like they owned the place. It was the first public sign of trouble. Karpelès fixed it, or he thought he did. The real problem was structural, not technical. Over the next 2 years, Mt. Gox suffered dozens of breaches. Some were caught, others weren't. Attackers used compromised credentials. They exploited API vulnerabilities. They found backdoors in the payment processors. The exchange leaked user data. It leaked private keys. Karpelès patched one hole and 3 more appeared. The platform was a calendar. But here's what the hack narrative misses. Most of the bitcoins weren't stolen in a single dramatic breach. They were stolen incrementally, over years, in dozens of small attacks that went unnoticed. Mt. Gox's accounting was so poor that Karpelès didn't even know coins were missing. He had no real-time audits, no reconciliation, no way to know if user funds were actually there. In late 2013, Bitcoin's price exploded. It went from $100 to $1,000 in months. Suddenly, Mt. Gox's problems became visible. Users tried to withdraw their coins. Withdrawals started failing. Karpelès investigated and discovered something he couldn't explain. The bitcoins weren't there. Hundreds of thousands of coins had vanished. He had no audit trail, no evidence of when they left, no way to prove what happened. This is the pivot. This is where the real story begins. Karpelès faced a choice. He could admit that Mt. Gox had never properly secured customer funds. He could confess years of negligence, or he could frame it as a hack, a single catastrophic attack, something beyond his control. On February 24, 2014, he chose the second path. Mt. Gox went offline. Karpelès released a statement. The exchange had been hacked. 850,000 bitcoins, 750,000 belonging to users, 100,000 belonging to Mt. Gox itself, were gone. The statement was vague. It offered no technical details. It didn't explain how a breach could go undetected for so long. It didn't address why the exchange had no backups, no cold storage, no basic safeguards. The market panicked. Bitcoin's price collapsed 20% in days. Exchanges worldwide froze withdrawals. Users demanded proof that their coins were safe. The panic spread to traditional finance. CNBC, Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal all ran the same headline. Bitcoin exchange hacked, millions lost. The technology is broken. The narrative of sophisticated cybercriminals had taken hold, but investigators later found something different. They analyzed the blockchain, the permanent ledger of all Bitcoin transactions. They traced the stolen coins. Most of them didn't move. They sat in wallets for months, then years. If sophisticated attackers had stolen them, why wouldn't they move them immediately? Why leave them idle? The answer: because there were no sophisticated attackers. What actually happened was far simpler and far worse. Mt. Gox's security was so compromised that attackers, some sophisticated, many not, had been stealing coins for years. Some were miners extracting transaction fees they shouldn't have had access to. Some were users who'd gained admin credentials. Some were employees. The exchange was an open door. Karpelès just didn't notice because he wasn't looking. The hack narrative was convenient. It absolved Karpelès of negligence. It positioned Bitcoin as the victim of external criminals rather than the victim of its own ecosystem's carelessness. Regulators couldn't fault a developer for being hacked, but they could fault him for running an exchange without basic accounting, without insurance, without custody protocols. The hack story was easier to tell. Years later, in bankruptcy proceedings, investigators recovered some coins, not from a hacker's wallet, from Mt. Gox's own cold storage, overlooked during the initial accounting. The total loss was closer to 650,000 bitcoins, still catastrophic, but not the 850,000 initially claimed. The discrepancy revealed something crucial. Nobody at Mt. Gox knew what they had. Mt. Gox's collapse had a lasting effect. It established a template. When crypto platforms fail, they call it a hack. It made the industry paranoid about custody. It created a market for third-party security audits and insurance products. It taught the community a hard lesson about centralization. Most importantly, it showed that the real danger wasn't the technology. It was the people running it. Karpelès was never criminally charged. He was sued in civil court. Mt. Gox entered bankruptcy. Users waited years for settlements. Some recovered portions of their coins. Many lost everything. The exchange that once moved 70% of Bitcoin's volume became a cautionary tale, not about hacking, but about negligence dressed up as victimhood. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research. Subscribe for the next deep dive into the collapses and frauds that built modern finance. There's a new one every week. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research.